Yeah, Angela Merkel is panicked today. Her nightmare has come true. The nationalist populist Alternative for Germany is beginning to exercise tremendous political power. And no matter what she tries to do to stop it, she's only prolonging the inevitable. We're going to look at what's going on in Thuringia and why it spells the eventual disaster for Merkel and for the future of a globalist Germany. You're not going to want to miss this. Greetings, everyone. It's great to be with you. Happy Friday to all of you. Make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. We'd love to have you as a regular part of this channel where we analyze current events in light of conservative trends so you can live in the present in light of even better things to come. Also, we have a brand new gift for all of you. I'm often asked what news sites I frequent to get my information, and I decided to just sit down and put them all together in a single resource. I go to about 20 sites, and I put them all together as a free download that we're calling our Fake News Antidote, and you can download it completely free at the link down below in the pinned comment section. I think you're going to really enjoy that resource. It was a pleasure to put together. And last but not least, let's give a huge shout out to the sponsor of this video, and that's our good friends over at Virtual Shield. You know them well if you're not using a VPN or a virtual private network on your desktop, tablet, or mobile device while browsing the internet, then you really are exposing yourself to a lot of potential danger. But thanks to our good friends over at Virtual Shield, protecting yourself from hackers and identity theft, frankly, has never been easier. And in order to honor the passing of one of the NBA's all-time greatest athletes, this month Virtual Shield is offering 24% off all VPN plans and all premium add-ons, including Protection Plus, residential access, and VIP performance plans for as low as the price of a cup of coffee. So sign up for a free 30-day trial, I should say, by clicking on the link below and find out what all the hype is about. You got nothing to lose. Click on that link today. All right, so let's dive right in here. I want to give a huge shout out to many of you who have sent me articles on this topic, especially our good friend Klaus in Germany, who's provided some on-the-ground perspective of what's going on in Thuringia. So just to give you some brief context here, the German state of Thuringia held their regional elections back in October of last year. So we're talking a few months back. And if you're interested, we did do a video on the results of that, which were nothing short of astonishing for the Nationalist Populist Party known as the Alternative für Deutschland, the AfD, which is no stranger for our regular viewers. They're one of the major rising nationalist populist parties that we frequently highlight on this channel. The AfD is a very young party. They were founded in 2013. They're only about 7 years old. And yet they've surged to become the third most popular party in Germany as a whole. And in places like Brandenburg and Thuringia, they are becoming, or very near to becoming, the single most popular party of them all. So Thuringia has their regional elections in October, and the result was this amazing victory for the Nationalist Populist Alternative for Germany, the AfD. Now, the turnout was extraordinary. About 65% of the state's nearly 2 million voters came out to vote, compared to less than 53% 5 years ago in their last election. The post-communist left-wing party, simply known as the Left, Die Linke, placed first with 31% of the vote. Thuringia is the only state where the former premier belonged to basically a communist party, okay, the Die Linke party. And they've been, up to this point, ruling in a coalition with the center-left SPD, the Social Democrats, and the Green Party. So everyone expected them to do well. The real news of that October election was the stunning surge in support for the nationalist right AfD, right, the Alternative für Deutschland. They came in second with 23.4% of the vote, more than doubling their support from their last election 5 years ago. And perhaps most importantly, beating, yes, you heard that right, beating Angela Merkel's party, the Christian Democratic Union, the CDU, who came in a humiliating third. Very similar situation happened in Brandenburg just a few weeks earlier in September when the AfD beat out Merkel's CDU. So that's some of the backdrop to all of this drama here, all right? So after the election, no one won an outright majority, so the best they could do is form what's called a minority government. And so after months of deliberations, they held their vote for who would be the premier, who's sort of the governor of Thuringia. Now, everyone expected Die Linke's leader, a fellow by the name of Bodo Ramelow, who had already been serving as premier over the last several years, they all expected him to win since they got the most votes. They got 31%. Die Linke got 31%. But something happened that blew everyone away. No one was expecting this. When the votes for premier were all tallied up, Ramelow lost by one vote to a member of the Free Democrats Party, a fellow by the name of Thomas Kemmerich. Now, they as a party didn't do very well. They only got about this is Kemmerich's party, only about 5% of the vote. But he won the premiership because the CDU, which is Merkel's party, the CDU actually sort of teamed up with the AfD to throw the leftists out of power. Now, here's the problem. Under Merkel's leadership, the CDU is basically banned from working with the AfD in any capacity because as the chief globalist of the world, Angela Merkel has designated the AfD to be the new fascism and Nazism and extreme right-wing, far-right, radical right, yada, yada, yada. And so you're not allowed to even touch them, okay? And so this means that if this fellow Kemmerich won the premiership with the help of the AfD, the CDU is supposed to reject the vote and call for fresh elections, which is precisely what Merkel demanded from Berlin. When she found out that members of the CDU had no problem voting alongside the AfD in Thuringia, she freaked out. Even though keep in mind the AfD is bigger than the CDU in the Thuringian assembly, but nevertheless, Merkel freaked out. Leftist liberals across Germany freaked out because now we were seeing the AfD actually having an effect on the makeup of German politics and therefore German public policy. And the freakout didn't stop with the liberal globalists in Germany. Guy Verhofstadt, one of the major Eurocrats in the European Union, absolutely odious fellow. He did everything he could to thwart the Brexit process. Guy Verhofstadt actually tweeted out a picture of the AfD leader in Thuringia right next to a picture of Adolf Hitler. And they're both in the same pose. They're shaking hands with leaders that gave them power, as it were. And Adolf Hitler and his Nazi Socialist Party ended up taking power first in Thuringia. So this obnoxious globalist Guy Verhofstadt basically called the AfD leader Hitler. And that's perhaps one of the nicer things that were said. Every globalist liberal in Europe seemed to have been totally gone hysterical that the AfD was now functioning in the government of Germany. Now, needless to say that Kemmerich, who won the premiership by the one vote with AfD backing, he's resigned in the last 24 hours. The government there in Thuringia has effectively become paralyzed. People are calling now for new elections. To which I say, be careful for what you ask for. Many are saying the AfD may turn around and actually win those elections outright. We'll have to see what happens there. Now, there's a lot to be said here, but I think there's a couple of takeaways in all this, all right? Here's the takeaways that I'm getting. I think the first one you already know. Let's start with the obvious one. Whether you're dealing with the center-right like Merkel's CDU or the center-left like the Social Democrats, they are both perfectly comfortable working with Marxist communist hangovers like Die Linke. And I think we need to let that hit us, right? When all is said and done, they will side openly with explicit Marxists before they side with the nationalist populist right. The political center of Germany, in particular, and Europe in general, has no problem whatsoever with communism. Let's just be blunt. Guy Verhofstadt loves Marxists. He has no problem with them at all. You see, it would be one thing if these globalists like Merkel and Verhofstadt marginalized the far left, the radical left, in the same way they're trying to marginalize the so-called far right or radical right. But they don't, you see. This is why in our current globalist parlance, there's no such thing as a far left. You never hear the term. But of course you have the far right, but they have to be called that in order to justify marginalizing them and refusing to work with them. So that's why they invent these terms far right or radical right or fascist Nazi and all that. These are terms that justify their exclusion from the democratic process. So that's the first thing we need to get here. In their attempt at stopping the rise of the nationalist populist right, centrist parties are perfectly willing to embrace the radical left, which we're seeing here in the States as well. Of course, Trump is the greatest threat to democracy ever, while Bernie Sanders is just a cute old man who means well. So that's the first thing. And that, by the way, is why we like to use the term the Marxist media here on this channel, because they love embracing the communist far left. But here's the real important takeaway. This is the major thing we need to glean from all of this. What Merkel did in shutting down a perfectly legitimate exercise in democratic rule, in shutting that down and demanding new elections, all Merkel is doing is prolonging the inevitable. We all have to get that. All Merkel is doing is prolonging the inevitable. In fact, by marginalizing the AfD, if anything, Merkel is only speeding up the process by which the AfD will inevitably take power. I particularly appreciate scholars like Matthew Goodwin, Eric Kaufman, and others who have argued, I think quite rightly, that the more the centrist parties, the so-called mainstream parties, the more they ignore the political and economic and cultural concerns that are expressed by nationalist right parties like the AfD, the stronger those parties become. Because those perfectly legitimate concerns like border security, economic security, and cultural security, which are affecting members of both the traditional political left and right, because those legitimate concerns are continuously ignored by the political center and by the political left, there is steady and noticeable defection of voters from the mainstream parties over to the nationalist populist right. Because it's precisely the nationalist populist right, like the AfD, who are addressing and talking about and promising action on these very real and legitimate concerns that voters have. And so they're getting rewarded. And the more the centrists ignore the concerns, the stronger the AfD becomes. And Merkel has made it very clear that her government will continue to disregard and ignore those concerns. So, ironically, Merkel's dismissiveness is only going to make the AfD stronger. So we'll most certainly be keeping our eyes on how things develop in the short run, but there's no question in the long run, the AfD is rising. And Merkel, whether she likes it or not, has already begun to fall. Now, before you go, make sure to check out our latest video on the media freakout over President Trump's acquittal. We have a video montage that just shows how insane they've gotten, and you are going to love it. It's hilarious. So make sure to click on the link, and I'll see you over there. God bless.